there is a silent cost happening in personal brands, businesses, and the use of AI that isn't really being talked about a lot. And it's been something that's been coming up a lot for me as I've been doing a lot of research and work behind the scenes in my own business. And don't get me wrong, I use AI. I do use it to help me structure my thoughts and, get really clear about what it is I'm trying to say about certain things, trying out ideas. But there's a difference between that and then how you show up. And there's something I have been thinking a lot about, and I've been just watching to see what happens online and in real time with people using especially things like AI-produced headshots. So there's a lot more of those things happening at the moment. And it's interesting to notice the reactions that happen when people see someone post an AI headshot and the compliments that come in, and then the response that comes from the person who posted the photo. And there's almost like there's this juxtaposition between, having a bit of fun, which it is, it's a bit of fun, but then there's something else that's going on, and, not a lot of us are talking about it, but it feels as though there is this essence of any kind of AI headshot like that reinforcing the gap psychologically between how you see yourself showing up, how you feel you're showing up, and then how you want it to show up. And a lot of that can influence our level of imposter syndrome, because if I read for you the definition for imposter syndrome, it says it's the persistent inability to believe that one's success is deserved or has been legitimately achieved as a result of one's own efforts or skills. So there's something about, creativity and getting curious about being in the messy middle, that messy process of bringing something to life. And creativity, there's a lot of research around that. And there's really a lot to be said about when you're creating things for your own business, particularly personal brands where you are the actual product, you are the thing that is serving your customers, the person who's serving your customers. When you can get really into the nitty-gritty of creating the content to serve your customers, it's really empowering, isn't it? Like, especially if you spend a lot of time building out like a program or, creating a slide deck of something that you really feel passionately about, it just lands differently, doesn't it? And I see this in the studio when someone has had to push through real discomfort, imposter syndrome, or roadblocks of some kind, where they didn't think that they could achieve, something in their mind that they wanted to achieve, and then they actually did it. The gap with imposter syndrome kind of gets smaller as a result. And I'm fascinated by this because, as a former psychologist, my goal has always been all throughout my life, even in my new work now, that I want people to live in alignment. I want people to feel fully aligned, particularly those that are on the outer edges, who are a bit weird and a bit wacky and a bit left of center. And I watch and observe and see these things happening with AI, and it's whether it's video or photos or copy that people are writing, when they've actually had to really sweat to create it, not literally, but but when they've really had to do the work and get in and put some grit into actually creating it, it means something, and it shifts the person's perspective and their mindset, and it has a real psychological effect. And so what does the opposite do when you don't have to actually really work for it? And I do wonder about that with AI produced content. Yes, there's the allure of, things can get done pretty quickly, and, we can look like everything's nicely polished. And so we then start heading into perfectionism kind of mode with a lot of AI work, which thereby actually reinforces imposter syndrome even more so when it is too perfect. And so I'm finding it fascinating to watch, because not a lot of people are talking about it, but I'm just sitting on the sidelines going, this is going to be interesting how this plays out, and what are the long-term effects of this psychologically. And if you've got any articles, any kind of research that you've come across, I'd love to read about it one way or the other, whatever way it's supporting. I liken it to many, many years ago, when magazine covers would be highly criticized because they would be, like powerfully changing the whole look of a model to a point where, in Photoshop, they just didn't look like themselves at all. Like they weren't even attainable. Anyone remember the thigh gap kind of discussions? And we used to be up in arms about that kind of stuff. We used to talk about, don't do this to our daughters kind of thing. They're impressionably watching on and seeing what is considered ideal, and they can't actually achieve that. And this is where this gap happens. And I see this as this silent look, I'm not going to even mince words here. I think it's a silent killer for the confidence and the empowerment and the embodiment for brands who want to really do something differently in the world. And I guess I'm just wondering where this is going and where it's going to head and where we're going to end up at the end of all of this. So I guess my suggestion would be is get curious with AI, but also throw your entire filter over it and really analyze, is this actually me, or is this not quite me? Is this not quite how I would normally show up? And if there is a gap, then, go back to the drawing board and try and really get back to some more of the authenticity about who you truly are, your true essence coming forward. I'd love to hear your comments. What are your thoughts on this topic? It's an interesting one. It plays on my mind lately. And I'm just observing for now, but I'd love to read some more about it. Yeah.